Many people believe that consistency is only worthwhile when the results are visible, when every effort brings an immediate reward that confirms they are on the right path. But that is a dangerous illusion, because the greatest achievements rarely show signs in their earliest stages. There are seeds that remain hidden for months, even years, before they bloom. As Carl Jung explained, those who reach the farthest are not the ones who seek constant motivation or quick results, but those who keep moving even when nothing seems to be changing. True consistency is forged in darkness, in those days when doubt whispers that none of this is worth it. And it is in those days when you are truly defined, because every repeated action, even if it shows no visible result, is building an invisible foundation that one day will sustain everything you dream of. You do not need to see progress to know it exists. You only need to keep moving forward, because success does not always arrive quickly, but it always arrives for those who never stop. Consistency is one of those principles everyone mentions, but few are truly willing to practice, not because they do not understand it, but because it requires facing one of life's hardest realities, doing the work without any visible guarantee of reward. We live in an era where the entire world pushes us toward instant gratification, where everything we desire seems just a click away. And that mentality has weakened many people's ability to sustain long-term effort. But true progress, the kind that separates an ordinary life from an extraordinary one, has never been a sprint. It is a marathon. And in that marathon, the winner is not the fastest. It is the one who never stops. Consistency is not measured on good days. It is measured on the days when you feel tired, when nothing seems to move forward, when you question if all this effort is even worth it. And yet, you keep going. It is in those moments that the invisible muscle is built, the one that will allow you to hold everything you wish to achieve. Anyone can commit for a week. Anyone can give their all for a month. But the one who maintains the pace for years, even amid uncertainty, reaches places others can only imagine. Think of a farmer. He plants the seed, waters it, protects it from the weather and the pests, and for weeks he sees nothing, only soil. If he were impatient, he would abandon the field too soon, convinced that nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, life is forming. The seed is taking root, preparing to emerge with strength. The same happens with your efforts. Often, real progress is not immediately visible, but it is happening, and if you quit, you will never see what was about to unfold. This is the problem for many people today. They mistake the absence of immediate results for the absence of real progress. And because they lack the patience to sustain the work, they jump from one thing to another, always starting, never finishing. They live in a constant cycle of enthusiasm and abandonment, and each time they give up, they strengthen the habit of surrendering. Consistency works the other way around. Every time you persist, even without results, you strengthen the habit of endurance. Engrave this deeply within you. Your success is not measured only by what you achieve, but by what you are capable of sustaining over time. A man may have a moment of luck, but only the consistent can repeat that success again and again. And that ability to repeat, that rhythm, is what builds empires, transforms careers, and changes lives. If you wish to excel in any area, business, health, relationships, or personal growth, you must accept that there will be periods of silence, of doubt, and even of apparent regression. and you must commit to keep going, not because you see results, but because you know that the right action, repeated enough times, always produces one. That certainty is what separates those who arrive from those who give up. Because when you are consistent, even if you don't notice it immediately, you are creating a future that will sooner or later reward you. Consistency, in essence, is a commitment to yourself, not to circumstances, nor to the approval of others. And here lies the true challenge: maintaining that commitment even when the world seems to ignore your effort. Most people base their motivation on external reactions, applause, recognition, visible rewards. And when those stimuli disappear, their discipline disappears too. But if your consistency depends on external factors, it will never be solid. The only consistency that lasts is the one born from inner conviction. I do this because it is right, because it is part of who I am, not because others recognize it. That is where many people lose themselves. They start with enthusiasm, with clear goals and high energy, but as soon as progress stops being obvious, their determination fades. The problem is not their lack of ability, it is that they have not trained their minds to work in the dark. They have grown used to instant gratification, and when it does not come, their entire system collapses. You cannot afford that luxury. If you want results that truly endure, you must train your mind to be relentless with your habits, even when the entire world believes it's not worth it. Think of the greatest achievements in history: scientific discoveries, athletic feats, empires of innovation. None of them were built overnight. Each achievement was the result of years of consistent, repetitive effort, often tedious and unrewarding, long before anything visible occurred. And in every one of those journeys, there were moments when the individual could have given up, moments when no sign of success appeared, yet they chose to continue. That is the essence of perseverance: resisting the impulse to quit when it seems that nothing is working. To cultivate this inner strength, one must change their relationship with time. Do not measure it by how long it takes to see results, but by how long you can sustain the habit. The question is not when success will come, but how long you can remain on the right path, regardless of circumstances. If your answer is, as long as it takes, you've already won half the battle. For such a mindset makes you unshakable against delays, failures, and unexpected challenges. Another secret lies in redefining what progress means. Progress is not always visible or measurable. Sometimes, progress is simply the act of not retreating, resisting temptation, maintaining a habit, or completing a task, even when you lack motivation. Each of these invisible victories is another brick in the structure you are building. And even if no one else sees them, you must value them as monumental milestones. Remember, consistency is not glamorous. It's not always exciting. Often, it feels routine or even dull, yet it is precisely that monotonous repetition that gives birth to extraordinary outcomes. If you learn to honor the process, even when it feels slow, one day you will wake up and realize that everything has changed. Not because you did something radically different overnight, but because you never stopped doing what mattered. Constancy becomes an invincible force the moment you stop depending on perfect conditions. Many postpone action while waiting for the ideal moment, when they'll have more time, more money, more energy, or fewer problems. But that moment never comes. Life will always present obstacles, distractions, and responsibilities. If your commitment only exists when circumstances are favorable, your progress will always be fragile. True transformation happens when you take action, even on the days when everything seems against you. That means learning to work under any condition. If you're tired, work at a slower pace, but work. If the day is chaotic, adapt your plan, but don't cancel it. If your emotions are low, perform the smallest possible task to keep the habit alive. Because perseverance is not about perfection, it's about not breaking the chain. Each day you honor your commitment. Even with a small step, you reinforce your identity as someone who does not quit. And that identity is far more valuable than any short-term goal because it will sustain you throughout your life. One of the greatest traps that destroys consistency is the search for daily motivation. Motivation is unstable. It comes and goes like any other emotion. There will be days when you feel inspired and others when you can barely get out of bed. If you depend on feeling motivated to act, you will waste more days than you'll use. Discipline, on the other hand, does not depend on mood. It is a conscious decision, reinforced by habit, executed without negotiation. And that is precisely what turns consistency into an unstoppable force. You must also understand that constancy will not always produce linear results. There will be times of rapid progress and times when you seem to be moving backward. That doesn't mean your effort is meaningless. Often, those apparent setbacks are necessary adjustments, lessons that prevent future mistakes or periods of rest that restore your strength for the next push. The danger lies in interpreting every slowdown as failure. When that happens, you risk sabotaging yourself and quitting just when you are about to consolidate lasting growth. That's why perseverance requires faith in the process, even when you don't fully understand how it works. Think of physical training. For weeks, you might see no visible changes, but inside, your body is already adapting, building strength and endurance. The same is true in every area of life. Silent progress is just as real as visible progress. And often, it's the one that has the greatest long-term impact. When you truly understand this, you stop asking, "Is this worth it?" and start asking, "How can I improve what I'm already doing?" That shift in mindset is crucial. It pulls you out of doubt and places you in a state of constant action. And that is where transformation happens. While others wait for perfect conditions or clear signs, you move forward. And that continuous, invisible progress, which seems to appear out of nowhere, eventually accumulates into results so great they seem miraculous. But you will know the truth. They are the inevitable consequence of your unbreakable consistency. Perseverance demands that you understand that true progress is cumulative, that every small step, no matter how insignificant it seems, adds up to a profound change that only becomes visible with time. This is the point where most people give up. They cannot bear the tension of working without immediate rewards. But this is precisely where you must remind yourself. Your task is not to seek daily proof of progress, but to ensure that every single day adds something to your ultimate goal. As Carl Jung taught, what you do each day, no matter how small, shapes the totality of who you are. Your constancy, more than talent or inspiration, is what will determine the depth of your transformation. Success is not measured by what you achieve quickly, but by what you can sustain consistently until it becomes part of who you are. Along this path, there will be moments when everything around you seems to tell you to stop. You might see others getting results faster, and comparison will make you doubt your own method. You might even hear voices suggesting that you're wasting your time. Perhaps your tired mind, weary of waiting, will try to convince you that it would be wiser to give up and start something that looks more promising. Yet, it is precisely at that moment when consistency stops being a product of motivation and becomes a conscious decision. A persistent person keeps going, even when every external sign screams at them to quit. This is a perfect moment to remind you of something important. If these messages help you stay strong, subscribe and share in the comments a goal you've decided to sustain, even if you haven't yet seen the results. Never underestimate the power of declaring out loud what you are committed to achieving, because when you commit publicly, you reinforce your identity. You stop being someone who wants to achieve something and become someone who has decided to achieve it. And when you act from that identity, you stop negotiating with your excuses. You begin to move by positive inertia, driven not only by what you want to achieve, but by who you've become in the process. Consistency trains you to endure discomfort without seeking quick escapes. Most people give up because they cannot tolerate the frustration of waiting. But if you understand that discomfort is a natural part of growth, you'll stop seeing it as an enemy and start recognizing it as proof that you're on the right path. Each day you act despite the discomfort. You strengthen not only what you do, but also how you think and feel. And there comes a point when consistency stops being an effort and becomes part of your nature. You no longer need to motivate yourself daily to keep up your habits. You simply do it because it's who you are. That is true victory, when the right action no longer depends on willpower, but becomes automatic. And when that happens, there's no goal you cannot reach. When consistency becomes a deeply rooted habit, it creates an effect few expect. Results begin to appear so naturally that they no longer seem like extraordinary achievements, but rather the logical outcome of your way of living. This is what separates those who achieve success once from those who replicate it again and again. Because consistency is not a stroke of luck. It's a system that keeps working even when you're not thinking about it. It's like an engine that stays on even when silent, moving everything forward without stopping. But before reaching that point, you must cross a stage that few can endure: the plateau. That period where, no matter how hard you try, everything seems to stay the same. This is where those without vision give up. They see the lack of visible progress as proof of failure, not realizing that the plateau is actually a sign that the system is stabilizing, preparing for a breakthrough. The consistent person doesn't see the plateau as a dead end, but as silent training for endurance. In those moments, mental discipline is essential. Your mind will search for reasons to stop. Maybe this isn't the right path. Maybe you've done enough. Maybe it's not worth continuing. But those voices are not signs that you should give up. They are signs that you're stepping out of your comfort zone. And each time you ignore them and move forward, your capacity to stay the course multiplies. What strengthens is not only your skill or your body, but your character. Consistency also demands that you stop seeking constant validation. If you need someone to tell you that you're doing well every day, you'll become dependent on that feedback to act. A truly consistent person moves forward because they know what they're doing is right, even if no one notices. It's a personal commitment, not a public performance. And that kind of commitment is more powerful than any temporary motivation. Another change consistency brings is that your standards rise without you even realizing it. What once seemed enough now feels like a starting point. What once felt challenging is now part of your routine. And that means you're growing. You no longer settle for simply doing things. You want to do them better. And that constant drive for improvement is what will take you far beyond what you once believed was possible. Carl Jung said that what you persist in doing becomes easier, not because the task changes, but because your ability to do it increases. Keep going, and one day your persistence will no longer be something you practice. It will be who you are. Remember that every day you keep moving forward, you are adding compound interest to your life. What today feels like a small step, when accumulated over months and years, becomes an unbridgeable distance between you and those who gave up. That is the true power of persistence, not in what changes overnight, but in what is transformed irreversibly over time. And once you understand this, you will no longer ask if it's worth it, because you will know deeply that it always is. Consistency is, above all, a declaration of identity. When you decide to be consistent, you are not saying, "I will do this until it works." You are saying, "This is who I am. I will keep doing it, no matter how long it takes to bear fruit." That shift changes everything, because if your commitment is tied to a deadline or a specific outcome, you will always find a reason to stop when things don't go as expected. But if your commitment is tied to your identity, no achievement reached and no hardship faced can break that pattern. You keep going because that is simply what you do. Consistency demands that you conquer the greatest enemy of progress: impatience. We live in a world that worships speed, instant success stories, radical transformations in weeks, visible results in days. All of this has conditioned people to believe that if something takes time, it must not be working. Yet the most valuable things in life, a healthy body, deep relationships, wisdom, financial freedom, mastery of a skill, all require time, discipline, and work that often cannot be shown on social media. This is the ground where you must learn to thrive. It is the silent work, without applause, without spectators, with only the quiet satisfaction of knowing you are keeping your word. To remain consistent, you must learn to manage your expectations. Not every day will feel like a victory, and that's perfectly fine. Some days you'll advance greatly, others you'll barely maintain your pace, but as long as you keep the right direction, you are progressing. This is where many fail. They confuse slowness with failure. They don't understand that success is not a straight upward line, but a sequence of rises, drops, and flat stretches that together form a staircase moving higher. Consistency is what allows you to keep climbing, even when the step feels endless. You must also understand that being consistent does not mean being rigid. There will be times when you must adjust the method, change the strategy, or redefine the goal. This is not surrender, it's adaptation. Those who mistake adaptability for weakness often remain stuck in plans that no longer work. The key is to stay loyal to the vision, but flexible with the path. In doing so, you avoid unnecessary exhaustion and maximize your chances of reaching your destination. Consistency also builds something priceless: personal credibility. Every time you fulfill what you set out to do, you send a message to yourself: "I can trust me." This inner trust becomes the foundation for all achievement. Because a person who doesn't believe in their own ability to keep promises will never dare to pursue great goals. They fear long effort because deep down, they doubt they can sustain it. But when your personal history is filled with kept commitments, you no longer question your strength, and that confidence radiates outward, earning respect and genuine admiration from others. Ultimately, remember that consistency is not measured in days, but in decades. What you build today is not just for a short-term goal, but to create a life where progress becomes inevitable. So now, even if you see no sprouts, water the soil, even if it looks the same. Protect your process, even if no one understands it. Because when your constancy compounds over time, results stop being a possibility and become a certainty. And that certainty is what ensures that sooner or later, a steadfast person always wins. Consistency teaches something few ever grasp, that true strength is not found in what you do when everything is going well, but in what you continue to do when everything seems to fall apart. It is easy to be disciplined in times of calm, when motivation is high and the conditions are favorable. But those periods are the exception, not the rule. Life, for the most part, is uneven terrain, full of ups and downs, distractions, crises, and temptations to give up. This is where consistency becomes your best armor. It allows you to move forward even when the path is uncomfortable, hostile, or uncertain. In those difficult moments, the mind will seek shortcuts. It will tell you to rest just for today, to skip one day because it doesn't matter, to distract yourself with something easier or more instantly gratifying. But every time you give in to that voice, you strengthen the habit of breaking your own promise. And every time you ignore it and act anyway, you strengthen the habit of standing firm. It is like training a muscle. The more you use it under adverse conditions, the stronger it becomes. The great mistake many make is believing that consistency is an act of brute force, like pushing against a wall every day without thinking. In truth, it is a conscious strategy. It means knowing when to push hard and when to conserve energy, when to act with intensity, and when to move slowly to avoid burnout. Consistency is not an eternal sprint. It is the ability to maintain the rhythm long enough for accumulated effort to put you ahead of everyone else. It also means learning to work without external validation. Don't expect the world to applaud your daily discipline. Most people won't even notice your effort until your results become impossible to ignore. And by the time that happens, you'll be so accustomed to your rhythm that you won't need recognition to keep going. This is the power of a consistent person, one who doesn't act to be seen, but because they know that the value of what they are building lies far beyond anyone's opinion. Consistency also generates what could be called personal momentum, an accumulated energy that makes moving forward easier than stopping. At first, every step feels heavy because you are breaking old patterns and creating new ones. But once you have repeated the action long enough, a point arrives when inertia begins to work in your favor. He no longer needs to argue with his mind every morning. He simply acts as naturally as breathing or walking. And the most powerful thing is that this momentum doesn't apply to just one area of life. It expands. The discipline he builds in the gym reflects in his work. The discipline he practices in his finances reflects in his relationships. The one he cultivates in his studies shapes his character. Consistency becomes an invisible thread that weaves through every aspect of life, elevating them all at once. That's why, whenever you feel like nothing is changing, remember this. What you're strengthening now is not just your body, your career, or your skills. You're strengthening your capacity to stay in the game long enough for the game itself to change in your favor. And when that happens, every sacrifice you make today will become the exact reason why you'll stand in a position others will never reach. Consistency is not just a habit, it's a philosophy of life that redefines your relationship with time, effort, and your own self. Once you truly embrace it, you stop thinking in terms of what you can achieve this week and begin to ask, what can I build over the next 5 or 10 years if I keep this rhythm? That long-term vision places you at a level where competition fades, because most people can't think beyond the next month. You, on the other hand, are investing in something that won't just bear fruit. It will continue to bear fruit for decades. But this long-term commitment also demands that you learn to live with something most people can't tolerate: the apparent lack of visible progress during the first months or even years. Your growth may be so gradual that you don't notice it. It's like watching a tree grow. Each day looks the same, but when you compare it to years before, the difference is enormous. That is the kind of progress consistency brings. Slow, silent, but unstoppable. And that kind of progress is the hardest to destroy, because it wasn't built on luck, but on sustained effort. Consistency also forces you to confront your own inner resistance. Not just laziness or procrastination, but that subtle voice whispering, "What if all this effort isn't worth it?" That's the most dangerous test, because it doesn't attack your body, it attacks your faith in the process. The only way to overcome that voice, as Carl Jung would say, is by realizing that your commitment must not depend on immediate results, but on the deep conviction that perseverance itself will transform you into a stronger, more capable, and more conscious individual. Another crucial aspect is that consistency eliminates the exhausting need to start from zero again and again. People who lack it live in cycles. They work hard for a while, quit, lose what they gained, and start over. This not only delays progress, but drains mental energy. Consistency, instead, makes your progress cumulative. Even on days when you do less than usual, you're still adding, still maintaining the solid foundation upon which the next stage will be built. And here lies a vital truth. Consistency is not about doing as much as possible every day. It's about doing enough not to break the habit. A small step forward is always better than standing still. This continuity keeps the inner engine alive, because when you stop completely, the cost of restarting is far greater than the effort of steady movement. Ultimately, consistency gives you something money can't buy: moral authority over yourself. When you look back and realize that you've kept your word for months or years, you discover that you can fully trust yourself. You no longer rely on fleeting motivation or empty promises. You become a person who knows that if he says he will, he will. That inner reputation is worth more than any isolated success, because it's the foundation on which all others are built. With it, no obstacle is large enough to stop you. Consistency becomes your most unfair advantage when others start to quit, because there always comes a point where most people stop, the point where effort feels too heavy, results too slow, and doubts too loud. That's the moment you must remember. The goal is not to be the fastest, it's to be the one still standing. Prolonged endurance doesn't just take you further, it places you in a territory where competition is minimal, because few possess the patience and discipline to stay long enough. But don't be fooled. This perseverance doesn't arise automatically. It must be cultivated day after day through small, deliberate decisions that reinforce your commitment. Each time you face the temptation to quit and choose to continue, you forge a character that doesn't easily bend. And that character, far more than any technical skill, is what will make you stand out in the long run. As Jung taught, mastery is not achieved by grand gestures, but by the quiet, consistent alignment between what you say, what you do, and what you believe. That alignment, maintained over time, is what eventually turns a man into his highest potential. Skills can be learned, resources can be acquired, but the strength to sustain a long effort is forged in silence, in those hours when no one is watching. Carl Jung would say that the true transformation of character happens in solitude, where the ego has no audience to impress and the self begins to emerge. Another uncomfortable truth is that discipline demands you to tolerate monotony. Not every day will be exciting, and often the repetition of the same actions will feel painfully dull. That's where the weak seek distractions. They switch goals, methods, or paths, believing that change will make things more stimulating. But those who understand the nature of progress know that monotony is part of the price. They don't fight it, they embrace it, because they know they're building something that isn't for today, but for eternity. Constancy, then, reshapes their very definition of success. At first, you may chase a tangible goal, earning a certain amount, reaching a particular status, or achieving a physical or professional level. But over time, you realize that the true reward lies in the person you become through sustained effort. The goals you reach bring momentary satisfaction. The identity forged through consistency brings lifelong fulfillment. You must also understand that to be consistent, you must protect your habits as if they were sacred treasures. That means structuring your environment to support your commitment, eliminating temptations that pull you off your path, and surrounding yourself with people who respect and reinforce your discipline. Never underestimate this truth. Constancy isn't only a matter of willpower, it's also a matter of strategy. An environment aligned with your goals multiplies your ability to endure. An environment that contradicts them destroys it. And most importantly, remember that consistency is not a burden. It's a privilege. It means you have found something worth waking up for every day, something that justifies your effort even when no one else understands it. It means you are willing to pay the price that others refuse to pay in order to live a life others will never experience. When you begin to see your discipline as an honor instead of an obligation, you stop counting the days and start cherishing them as part of a process that will, sooner or later, take you exactly where you're meant to be. Consistency in its purest form is a silent pact with yourself to keep moving forward even when no one sees you, when no one applauds, and when everything around you seems to tell you it's not worth it. It's the force that holds you in cold mornings, through days with no energy and weeks without visible results. It's the commitment that doesn't break with failure or success, because it doesn't depend on what happens outside. It depends on what you already decided within. And that's where your true power resides, in the realization that you don't need permission, external motivation, or perfect conditions to keep going. The constant man, Jung would say, understands that time is his greatest ally. He doesn't compete to achieve everything fast. He competes to remain long enough for the world to have no choice but to bow before the evidence of his results. And the most fascinating thing is that when that moment comes, People will call him talented, lucky, or blessed, without realizing that the only thing that set him apart was his refusal to quit. Because consistency doesn't shine at the beginning. It shines at the end, when almost no one remains. That's why consistency is more than a strategy. It's a way of life. It means that the word you give yourself weighs more than any obstacle, that your vision is stronger than any distraction, and that your commitment outweighs your mood. It means you don't need to feel like acting. You've trained your body and mind to move without asking your emotions for permission. And that's one of the most powerful skills you can ever develop. Constancy doesn't make you perfect. It makes you unstoppable. There will be days when you fail, moments when you fall behind, circumstances that force you to pause. But the constant one always returns. He never stays away long enough to lose rhythm, because he knows a lost day isn't the end, but giving up is. That's what separates him from those who seem committed only when things are easy. In the end, consistency transforms you beyond any material result. It turns you into someone who fully trusts himself, who doesn't depend on fleeting motivation to act, who knows that no matter what happens, he will fulfill what he said he would. And that inner certainty is the true reward. Because when you can trust yourself, there's no dream too distant, no goal too great. If you choose to live by that philosophy, one day you'll look back and realize that everything that once seemed impossible has become inevitable. And then you'll understand that consistency didn't just bring you results, it gave you character, strength, and a life without regrets. That will be the moment when you finally see that you never needed guarantees. You only needed to keep going and going. That's what will take you, no matter how long it takes, exactly where you've always meant to be. What if I told you there's a reason why you're capable of dreaming bigger than most people around you? Why your mind often drifts toward visions of a greater life, higher goals, and deeper purpose. Yet somehow, despite all of that, you keep finding yourself trapped in the same old habits, the same sluggish days, the same inner frustration, the same cycle of motivation followed by letdown. And what if I promised you that if you stick with me through all three parts of this video, you're going to receive something no self-help book, no viral motivational clip, and no productivity guru has ever truly given you. I'm talking about a real map, a guide that doesn't just pump you full of adrenaline and leave you empty when the high fades. This is the roadmap out of the cycle, the real reason you've felt stuck for so long. It's not about motivation. It's not about laziness. It's not about discipline or morning routines. It's about the hidden architecture of your mind, something Carl Jung tried desperately to reveal to the world. If you stay with me to the end, you'll finally see it, the exact blueprint for turning all that suppressed ambition into lasting change. Not a quick fix, not a pep talk, real transformation. But none of this will make sense unless you stay until the end, because nothing truly changes until you see the full picture. And trust me, you've never heard it explained like this before. We've all felt it, haven't we? That strange mix of inspiration and paralysis. You see someone online, or maybe even in your real life, doing incredible things, building a business, launching a creative project, getting in shape, living with purpose, and you think, I have just as many ideas, maybe even more drive. Why can't I do the same? You make plans, you fantasize, you tell yourself this week will be different. But then, the moment comes when action is required, and something invisible stops you. Society calls it laziness. Maybe you've even used that word against yourself 100 times. But Jung didn't see it that way. Not at all. To him, what we call laziness is not a flaw in personality. It's not even about physical exhaustion. It's a label, a disguise, a symptom of something much deeper, an internal war you haven't been taught to recognize. Most people never look beneath the surface. They believe the answer is more willpower, stricter routines, stronger affirmations, more desire. So they watch video after video about success and productivity. They plan their dream life down to the detail. And yet, they can't get off the couch. They think they lack discipline. But Jung called it something entirely different. His entire life's work revolved around one core mission: to bring into light the hidden parts of ourselves, the pieces we avoid, suppress, deny. He called this the shadow. The shadow is not evil, it's not your enemy, but it is clever, and it holds the very things you try to avoid: fear, insecurity, shame, old pain, forgotten trauma, doubt. Now here's the mind-blowing part. The bigger your ambition, the bigger your shadow becomes. Why? Because every time you dream bigger, every time you imagine a life beyond the one you're living now, every time you step outside your comfort zone to pursue something bold or meaningful, your shadow feels threatened. Its job, you see, is to keep you safe. And safety, to the shadow, means staying small, staying hidden, staying predictable. So the moment you dream big, your shadow activates. Suddenly, you feel tired, you get distracted, you doubt yourself, you hesitate, you procrastinate with surprising creativity. Your mind invents perfectly logical excuses. Just one more day to rest. I'll start once I feel more prepared. Now's not the right time. Sound familiar? How many times have you committed to change, only to find yourself doing the opposite within hours or days? This isn't weakness. It's not a lack of character. It's a defense mechanism. Your own mind trying to protect you from perceived danger. Your ambition and your shadow are engaged in a constant tug-of-war. And until you recognize what's really happening, you'll keep losing that battle over and over. Maybe you think motivation is the answer. So you binge a few YouTube videos with powerful music and passionate speeches. You feel the surge of energy, the high of determination, and you whisper to yourself, "This time, I'm ready. This time, I'll do it." But here's the twist. Motivation, without awareness of your inner resistance, is just fuel for your shadow's fire. Jung believed you can't overpower the parts of yourself you refuse to face. The more hyped up you get without confronting that inner resistance, the more painful the crash will be when you inevitably fall short again. And guess what? The shadow feeds on that disappointment. Every time you fail, it whispers, "See, I told you this wouldn't work. I told you it was too much." Let's trace the cycle clearly so you can finally see the pattern most people miss. You get inspired. You set a massive goal. Maybe it's launching your own business, transforming your body, switching careers, or starting a new chapter in life. At first, you're all in. You make plans, you tell your friends, you feel on fire. But then, days pass. Distractions creep in. Doubt returns. You start negotiating with yourself. "I'll start next week. I just need to rest. Let me do a bit more research first." Before you know it, a week has passed. Maybe a month. That initial motivation fades. You feel like a failure. You search for the next source of inspiration, the next secret trick, and the cycle begins all over again. Here's the hard truth. Your problem isn't a lack of motivation, or talent, or opportunity. It's a lack of honest confrontation with that part of you that's terrified of what might happen if you actually changed. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Read that again. How many times have you said, "That's just how I am," or "I guess I'm not meant for more," or "I always mess things up"? That's not you talking. That's your shadow. That's the part of you that's been writing your life script without you even knowing it. And because you've mistaken it for truth, you've been calling it destiny. But destiny isn't fixed. Destiny is just the name we give to patterns we haven't yet understood. And here's the question almost no one dares to ask. What if the part of you that's been holding you back isn't trying to hurt you? What if it's just trying to protect a younger version of yourself, one who once felt unsafe, or unloved, or humiliated, and who now fears the exposure that comes with greatness? Facing your shadow doesn't mean destroying it. It means understanding it, integrating it, honoring its message without letting it control your life. And that is where real transformation begins. If you have ambition, but never seem to make progress, then the real question is this: what are you actually afraid of? Is it failure, or is it success, and all the inevitable change that comes with it? Are you afraid of being judged, of standing out, of being seen, and having others suddenly expect more from you? Many believe that fear is only about falling short. But what if the fear that holds you back is actually fear of expansion, of becoming more than you've ever been? Your shadow isn't trying to ruin your life. It doesn't want to destroy your goals or make you suffer. Its true purpose is to protect you from pain, from shame, from disappointment. But here's the issue. It doesn't know how to distinguish between real danger and imagined threat. To the unconscious mind, discomfort equals danger. So every time you dream of growth, of achievement, or transformation, the shadow steps in like a bodyguard who mistakes healing for harm. And every time you obey that hidden fear, you shrink a little bit. You become smaller, safer, quieter. And with each retreat, the shadow grows stronger. Its voice becomes more convincing. Its arguments more seductive. Most people surrender, long before they understand what's really going on. They repeat the same cycles for years, maybe even decades, blaming their lack of progress on low energy, poor discipline, or simply bad luck. But if you're still here, listening, you're already ahead of most. Because in this journey, divided into 3 deep parts, you'll discover something few ever truly grasp: how your shadow operates behind the scenes of your life. You'll get Carl Jung's step-by-step roadmap for making the unconscious conscious. You'll move beyond abstract ideas and into real tools. And by the end, you'll hold the blueprint for turning your ambition into meaningful, consistent action, regardless of how many times you've failed before. Most people will never get this far, but you have. And that alone means you're not where you used to be. In the next part, we'll explore exactly how to uncover your personal shadow and what happens when you stop fighting yourself and begin to collaborate with your hidden mind instead of resisting it. If you're looking for more than just a temporary motivation boost, if you're truly tired of feeling stuck and are ready for something real, then don't miss what comes next. Because yes, the reward is out there. It's waiting for you, but only if you complete the path. This is not a shortcut. This is a return to wholeness. Maybe you've blamed yourself for falling short more times than you can count. You told yourself it was laziness, lack of willpower, or even something you inherited. Bad genes, a broken upbringing. But here's the truth. Most people have never been taught where their real resistance comes from. Carl Jung would tell you that what you call your life is largely the sum of your unconscious habits, with your shadow quietly pulling the strings from behind the curtain. It's not weakness, it's survival. These are old survival programs, deeply buried memories, emotional patterns, and limiting beliefs so embedded in your psyche that you don't even know they're there. That's why change feels so heavy. You're not just trying to break a bad habit. You're going up against an invisible force that's been trying to keep you safe and comfortable since childhood. But if you truly want to break through, if you want to go further than just trying harder, then you must do what few ever dare to do. Face your shadow. Think back to the last time you truly wanted to change something in your life. Maybe it was improving your health, launching a business, learning a new skill. And do you remember what happened next? Suddenly, your mind flooded with distractions. Cleaning your room felt urgent. Checking your phone became irresistible. Talking about your dreams replaced actually working on them. That wasn't random. That was your shadow defending its territory. Why? Because any real change is a threat to your comfort zone. And the shadow will do whatever it takes to keep you there. It will distract you. It will flood you with anxiety. It will whisper guilt and shame. It will even punish you emotionally if it means stopping you from taking a risk. Jung saw this pattern again and again in his patients. They arrived full of ambition and deep longing. But beneath it all, they were paralyzed by fear. Fear of failure, yes, but also fear of judgment, rejection, or simply the unfamiliar. So they self-sabotaged over and over, and they called it fate. Here's the paradox that almost no one talks about. Every habit that keeps you stuck is giving you something in return, even if it's just temporary relief. Staying in bed means avoiding the pressure of the outside world. Not starting that project means never having to fail. Not asking for what you want means never risking rejection. Your shadow always offers the illusion of safety. It whispers, "You'll change tomorrow." But that tomorrow never arrives. Not until you name what your old pattern is giving you will you be able to let it go. And that's the key. You cannot transform what you refuse to confront. That's why Jung believed in radical honesty, even when it hurts. Most people never stop to truly listen to what their resistance is trying to say. But Jung taught that if you really want to change, you have to bring the shadow out of hiding. Not by force, but through dialogue. Try it tonight. Sit in a quiet place and imagine you're speaking to that part of you that always finds a reason not to start. Ask it, what are you afraid might happen if I succeed? Then wait. Let the answer come, even if it sounds silly, angry, or irrational. Often the shadow reveals old wounds, moments when you were mocked, criticized, or felt alone. Sometimes the fear isn't of failure, but of success, and all the new responsibilities that come with it. Other times, it's the fear that if you finally go after what you truly want, you'll lose the people who only loved the older version of you. That's not weakness, it's just old pain, disguised as procrastination or fatigue. But once you hear the story, you can begin to rewrite it. Most people try to force themselves into action through shame or inner aggression. They attack themselves with harsh words, with guilt, with enough excuses. But Jung said that never works because you can't hate yourself into growth. He taught something very different: acceptance. Not surrender, but compassionate acceptance. Accept that your mind has been trying to protect you, even when it sabotaged you. And when you accept your shadow, when you bring that fear, that laziness, or that doubt to the surface, it loses its power to control you from the dark. Suddenly, you're no longer wasting energy blaming yourself. You're free to use that energy for something new. You don't have to win this battle in one day. Jung knew that real change starts with the smallest, most honest step. If you feel stuck today, don't set impossible goals. Just do one small thing. Send that email. Take a 5-minute walk. Tell someone one truth. Then watch how your shadow reacts. It resists. It tries to bargain. It gets louder. Don't fight it. Just observe it. Because with each honest step, the grip of the shadow loosens a little more. This is the point in the path where most people quit. It gets uncomfortable. It feels slow. But those who keep going, who stay honest, who keep listening and taking small, real actions, they're the ones who finally break free. Remember, the real reward is at the end of this journey. Most people never make it there. But if you do, you'll have the blueprint to create real change, no matter how many times you've failed before. What comes next can change everything. In the final part, you'll see how to turn this new awareness into unstoppable momentum. This won't be just theory, but an exact process to turn your ambition into reality, day after day. No matter how strong your shadow used to be, you'll get the step-by-step method Jung would give to anyone desperate for change. And you'll understand why, once you see the shadow, you can never go back to sleep. If you want to finish what you started and finally become the person you dream of being, don't miss the last part. That's where real transformation happens. You've already gone farther than most. You've faced those invisible forces that kept you stuck. You've seen how the shadow turns ambition into resistance, and you've learned the power of speaking honestly with yourself. But here's where many still fall back. Why? Because understanding is not the same as transformation. There are people who understand their patterns perfectly, who analyze every detail of their behavior, but never take the leap into action. Jung saw it countless times in his patients. Self-knowledge is powerful, yes, but if it doesn't become movement, nothing changes. If you're still here, it's because you're ready for more than just pretty words. You're ready to apply concrete steps to break the cycle. You don't need another motivational video. What you need is a new relationship with your mind. Jung discovered that the only way to transform a pattern that lives in the shadow is to bring it to light. Again and again, with actions so small, the shadow can't stop them. Let's be honest, your shadow is always waiting for an excuse to say, "See, you failed again." That's why you shouldn't try to make a huge change. Don't try to prove anything to the world. Just prove that you can take one step, no matter how small. Choose one simple daily action that brings you closer to what you want. A short walk, a paragraph written, an honest message, a real conversation. And do it every day, even when your mind says it's pointless, that it's not enough. Because the power isn't in the size of the step. It's in breaking the spell of inaction. With every small win, the voice of the shadow grows weaker, not because it disappears, but because you stop taking its words as absolute truth. And in that new space, a freer version of you is born. Most people live life on autopilot, and then wonder why nothing ever changes. Jung taught that radical self-awareness is the engine behind any real transformation. So begin tracing your path, not in search of perfection, but out of honesty. Each night, ask yourself, did I take that small action today? What kind of resistance did I feel? Did my shadow try to negotiate, distract, or discourage me. Write it down, even if it's just one sentence. That process does two things. It keeps you honest with yourself and allows you to observe your shadow in real time. Because what is tracked transforms. And here comes one of the most common lies ambition tells us, that you have to do everything alone. But Jung knew that deep change happens in community, not in isolation. Find someone you trust, or even an online group, where you can share what you're trying to do, even if it feels silly, small, or shameful. The simple act of speaking your truth out loud breaks part of the shadow's grip. What once felt like shame now becomes connection. Others will see themselves in you. You won't feel so alone anymore. And that's when your ambition stops being a silent fantasy and begins to take shape as a living reality. The shadow is persistent. It doesn't disappear just because you've figured out how it works. There will be days when you feel like your old self again, full of familiar excuses, habits that call your name, fatigue, distractions. That inner voice telling you today isn't the day. And right there is where the path of those who truly transform their lives splits from those who surrender. Because the ones who really change don't lie to themselves. They know setbacks are part of the path, but they never let those setbacks be the end. Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." So if you fall, don't drown in guilt. Acknowledge the shadow, forgive yourself, and begin again. Every time you return to your intention after falling, you are carving a new pattern. You are proving, without shouting, that you don't need to be perfect to keep going. People who stay consistent, even imperfectly, always go further than those who demand perfection and give up at the first stumble. Because at its core, real progress isn't linear. It's a conscious wearing down of the old self, like filing down a stone that's blocked your path for years. And yes, it will hurt sometimes. At times, it will feel like you're stuck. But as long as you keep moving, you are changing. Here's your reward. Not an empty promise, but a real system based on Jung's deepest work. 1. Name your shadow. Write down what your so-called laziness is actually protecting. Don't judge it, just observe. 2. Choose one small daily action. Nothing dramatic, just something that moves you one step forward. 3. Track your progress with honesty. Each night, note your action and how resistance showed up. 4. Share your truth with someone, not to seek approval, but to break the silence. 5. Expect setbacks, but never abandon yourself. When you fall, start again. Never let shame have the last word. Do this for 21 days and watch what starts to happen. You'll notice the shadow losing its power, that days of stagnation become rare, and your confidence no longer comes from bursts of emotion, but from a quiet steadiness. The kind of confidence that comes from knowing you can, not because everything is fixed, but because you chose to keep going, even when it was hard. This isn't theory. This is how real people with real fears start to rewrite their story. Most never finish this journey. They stop halfway, store the advice, and keep waiting for that magical moment that never comes. But you, if you've made it this far, you've already proven something far stronger than any fleeting motivation. You've shown that you crave truth more than comfort. Jung believed that those brave enough to face themselves become the rarest and most powerful kind of human being. They are the ones who stop living under someone else's script and start writing their own. And the world needs more of that. More awakened, honest, moving people. If this series resonated with you, if you felt that finally Someone put into words what you've only silently felt. Here's your final challenge. Share in the comments what your shadow's been telling you, or what small action you're going to take today, and support someone else doing the same. Let's create a space where honesty isn't judged but celebrated, where change isn't a pressured obligation but a shared process. Because when we stop hiding our shadows, we also stop hiding our light. If you're looking for more content that goes beyond the noise and gives you real tools to transform from the inside out, subscribe and stay on this path with us. We don't sell empty motivation here. We speak to you like a friend who's been there and found a way through. Thank you for watching, for staying till the end, for not giving up. That alone is already a victory. Your new story begins now. Not tomorrow, not when everything aligns. Now. Because if the shadow fears anything more than anything else, it's that you'll actually begin. And you already have. It might be slow, you might fall again, but for the first time, you're not walking blind. You have a map, you have awareness, and most importantly, you have the will. Remember, you're not broken, not lazy, not flawed. You were just caught in an unconscious pattern that now you know how to break. And that changes everything. Carl Jung once said that the moment you dare to look at your own shadow, you can never go back to sleep. Because once you've seen what you're truly capable of, once you've confronted both your darkness and your light, there's no going back to pretending, no more fitting into molds that no longer serve you. You simply cannot settle for anything less than the truth, no matter how tempting comfort or routine may be. The journey to self-awareness isn't glamorous. It's not loud or full of applause. It's quiet, deeply personal, and sometimes even painful. But it's also the bravest thing a person can do. Jung believed that true revolution doesn't happen outside. It begins within. The world doesn't need more masks, more acting, or more pretense. What the world needs is honesty, authenticity, and people willing to live from a place of radical self-awareness. And that includes you. Yes, even with your doubts, even if you feel your steps are too small or your attempts are too imperfect, you, just as you are part of a larger transformation that is slowly unfolding. Every time you strive to be authentic, every time you choose honesty over comfort, every time you stay present with your emotions instead of running away from them, you are shaping something new. You are becoming the root of the life you've always dreamed of living, even if it doesn't look like much from the outside. Maybe no one else sees what you're building right now. Maybe it seems invisible, but the invisible is still important. The invisible of today becomes the solid foundation of tomorrow. Keep walking, keep trusting, because something beautiful is being born from your persistence. If this message moved you, even a little, please consider helping me share it. And thinking about that, I know for sure that the next video will reach you even more deeply. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Turn on that notification bell. Don't miss what's coming. I'll wait for you there. That space is full of reflections like the one you just heard. And I promise you, in just 5 seconds of watching it, you could discover something that will change the way you live your life. Before I say goodbye, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, how did this message make you feel? Have you been searching for inner peace lately? And if so, what has that journey been like for you? Your voice matters. It really does. I read every comment and carry your words with me. I'm excited to know what you think, how this message reached your heart. Let's continue this path of self-discovery together, because this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore, so much more to awaken within you. Until then, see you soon. Have you ever wondered why you keep repeating the same patterns in your relationships? Why it often feels like you're the one giving more, loving more, sacrificing more, while receiving less in return? Perhaps you've paused to ask yourself if this is normal, or if there's something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface of your emotional world. Today, we're going to explore one of the most common yet least understood challenges of the human psyche: emotional dependency. And to do so, we'll turn to the wisdom of one of the most revolutionary thinkers in modern psychology, Carl Jung. His insights go far beyond conventional explanations of behavior. Jung had a way of illuminating the invisible threads that weave our emotional lives together, often revealing that what we think is personal struggle is actually a profound psychological journey. So, imagine for a moment that you're in a relationship where you constantly feel the fear of being abandoned. Every choice you make, every word you speak, is filtered through the fear of rejection or disapproval. You begin to silence your true self, your wants, your opinions, your boundaries, all in the name of preserving the connection. You mold yourself to fit someone else's expectations, gradually losing sight of who you really are. If this resonates with you, you're not alone, and perhaps even more importantly, there is a way out of this cycle. Jung understood that emotional dependency is not simply a flaw or a personal weakness. It's not about being too emotional or too attached. It's a symptom of something far deeper, a reflection of unresolved inner dynamics playing out in the unconscious mind. He believed that many of these patterns are rooted in childhood, in the way we learned, often unconsciously, how to relate to others, and just as crucially, to ourselves. The issue isn't that we need others, we are social beings by nature. The real problem begins when we surrender our sense of worth, our identity, and our inner peace into someone else's hands. According to Jung, this type of dependency signals a disconnection from what he called the self, the deep, authentic core of our being that exists beyond the ego, beyond masks and expectations. When we lose connection with this vital center, we unconsciously search for something outside ourselves to fill the void. We crave validation, affection, approval, thinking these will give us what we're missing. But what we're really doing is handing over the responsibility for our happiness to someone else. And that's how the cycle of emotional dependency is born. Think back to a time when you prioritized someone else's needs above your own, when you ignored your own boundaries to avoid conflict, when you kept silent about your feelings because you were afraid of being abandoned, or when you changed fundamental parts of who you are just to be accepted. Jung would say that in those moments, you were living through your persona, the social mask we all wear to be liked, accepted, and safe, not from your true self. From a Jungian perspective, emotional dependency is a form of psychological projection. We project onto the other person qualities and powers that actually reside within us. We see them as the source of our joy or our suffering. We grant them authority over our self-esteem, our emotional well-being, our sense of purpose, and by doing so, we disconnect from our own inner power. Jung described this as a psychic inflation of the other and a deflation of the self. The person we depend on emotionally becomes disproportionately large in our inner world, while we shrink in comparison. We begin to orbit around them, like a satellite, forgetting that we are stars in our own right, radiant and whole, even when standing alone. This dynamic creates a profound imbalance in our relationships. We no longer relate as equals, but from a place of lack, from a hunger for something we believe only the other can provide. And the tragedy is that in this state, we are not truly loving the other person. We're loving the image, the projection, the role they play in our internal drama. We can't see them clearly because we're too busy using them as a mirror to fill what we believe is missing in ourselves. Does it sound familiar? The feeling that you can't live without someone, that your world collapses without their presence. This is what Jung referred to as psychic possession. It's as if part of your psyche has been hijacked by the dependency, making it nearly impossible to think clearly or act freely. But here's the powerful truth. Jung believed that within each of us lies the potential for profound transformation. He called this journey individuation, a lifelong process of integrating all the parts of ourselves, both conscious and unconscious. It's through this inner work that we reclaim the pieces of our soul we gave away, and in doing so, we free ourselves from the chains of dependency, learning instead to relate from wholeness rather than need. The very first step on this path is awareness. Simply recognizing your own patterns of emotional dependency is already a courageous act. Notice, without judgment, how you behave in your relationships. Do you lose yourself when you're with someone? Do you fear expressing disagreement or setting boundaries? Do you feel panic at the thought of being alone? These questions are not meant to induce guilt. They are guideposts, illuminating the areas of your life where healing is needed. Jung teaches us that behind every emotional dependency, there is a shadow, those parts of ourselves that we've rejected or repressed. Maybe early in life, you learned that your worth depended on pleasing others, or perhaps you internalized the belief that you weren't enough on your own. These beliefs settle in our shadow and begin to guide our behavior from the unconscious. For Jung, the encounter with the shadow is essential to our psychological growth. It's not about getting rid of it, but about consciously integrating it. When we face these darker aspects of ourselves directly, we strip them of their control over us. And it's precisely in this courageous act of self-observation that our liberation begins. If you're caught in a cycle of emotional dependency, it's important to understand that this pattern does not define who you are. It is simply a survival strategy you once developed, a way of coping that may have helped you then, but is now holding you back. The journey toward breaking free from emotional dependency involves what Jung would call the withdrawal of projections. This means realizing that the qualities we attribute to others, their ability to complete us, to give us worth, to make us feel safe, are actually aspects of ourselves that we haven't yet acknowledged or developed. When we begin to reclaim these projections, something extraordinary happens. We start to feel more whole within ourselves. We discover inner resources we never knew existed. And paradoxically, we become capable of forming more authentic and fulfilling relationships. Jung also spoke of the importance of cultivating what he called the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to integrate opposites and create something new, especially in the context of emotional dependency. This means finding a balance between our need for connection and our need for autonomy. It's not about moving from dependency to extreme individualism. It's about discovering a way of relating in which we can be interdependent, connected to others, but deeply rooted in our own being. This is a process that requires patience and compassion toward oneself. As Jung said, you don't light up the world by dimming your own light. Every time you commit to honoring your own needs, to setting healthy boundaries, to recognizing your own value, regardless of others' opinions, you're taking a step toward emotional freedom. Emotional dependency is often accompanied by what Jung would call complexes, knots of psychic energy formed around painful past experiences. These complexes are triggered in our current relationships, making us react from old wounds rather than from the present moment. A clear sign we're acting from a complex is emotional disproportion. If your response to a simple disagreement with a partner is overwhelming fear of abandonment, you're likely experiencing the activation of a complex. Jung would encourage us to observe these reactions as messengers from the unconscious, pointing to areas in need of healing. Working with dreams was one of the core tools in Jungian psychology. Our dreams often reveal aspects of emotional dependency that our conscious mind resists seeing. You might dream repeatedly of being lost, trapped, or desperately chasing someone. These symbols may be reflecting your current emotional state. Jung would invite us to keep a dream journal and reflect on the meanings hidden within. Not through rigid interpretation, but with open curiosity. Dreams speak a symbolic language that can help us understand the deeper dynamics of our psyche. Another key concept in Jungian psychology is the idea of archetypes, universal patterns that live in our collective unconscious and shape our experiences in emotionally dependent relationships. Often we activate archetypes like the savior, the victim, or the wounded child. When we rely emotionally on someone, we might be projecting the archetype of the savior onto them, unconsciously hoping they'll rescue us from our fears and emptiness. Or we may identify with the victim archetype, feeling powerless to change our circumstances. Recognizing these archetypal patterns helps us depersonalize our relational dynamics. It allows us to see that we are not merely dealing with our personal stories, but with deep psychic forces that have shaped human experience for millennia. This broader perspective can help us step back and observe our patterns with greater clarity. Jung believed that each of us holds within both masculine and feminine aspects, regardless of biological sex. He called these aspects animus, the masculine in the woman, and anima, the feminine in the man. In emotionally dependent relationships, we often project our animus or anima onto the other person, hoping they'll embody these energies for us. The path to liberation involves recognizing and developing these aspects within ourselves. If you've always depended on others to feel protected or to make decisions, working with your inner animus, your own masculine energy, can be transformative. If you're someone who constantly seeks emotional nourishment from others, connecting with your anima, your internal sensitivity and receptivity can radically change how you relate to people. Emotional dependency can also be understood as a form of what Jung would call ego inflation. Paradoxically, even though it seems we're making ourselves small before the other, there's a kind of arrogance in believing that we need someone so much that we cannot survive or be happy without them. This belief overestimates the importance of our desires and underestimates our capacity for growth and adaptation. Jung would remind us that life is in constant flux and transformation, and that our psyche holds an innate capacity for self-regulation, if we allow it to operate naturally. Sometimes, the losses and separations we fear the most are exactly what we need to rediscover forgotten parts of ourselves. If you're currently struggling with emotional dependency, I invite you to see this struggle not as a failure, but as an invitation to grow. Jung believed that our deepest psychological wounds also carry the seeds of our greatest transformation. Emotional dependency may be the portal to a deeper understanding of yourself, to greater integrity and authenticity. The path will not always be easy. There will be moments of intense anxiety when setting boundaries or prioritizing your own needs. Moments when loneliness feels unbearable. Times when you'll want to return to old patterns simply because they feel familiar. Jung teaches us that these responses are normal, part of the process. The key lies in observing them without judgment and remembering that each step you take toward emotional freedom is an act of self-love. A powerful practice Jung would suggest is the amplification of symbols. When you find yourself trapped in dependency, ask yourself, what image or symbol reflects how I feel? Maybe you see yourself as a castaway clinging to driftwood or a satellite endlessly orbiting a planet. Whatever image arises, allow yourself to explore it, draw it, write about it, speak with it. This process can uncover dimensions of your dependency that your rational mind couldn't perceive. Jung would also speak of the importance of community in our healing journey. Though the road to emotional freedom is deeply personal, we don't have to walk it alone. Surrounding ourselves with those who respect our process, reflect our truth, and hold space without enabling our dependency can be profoundly healing. Jung would emphasize that freedom from emotional dependency doesn't mean the absence of pain or vulnerability. In fact, as we shed our defenses and patterns, we may initially feel more exposed to life's wounds. The difference is that we now face these wounds from a place of wholeness, not fragmentation. A key Jungian insight is the acceptance of duality. We are not only light, we are also shadow. Not only strong, but also vulnerable. Not only independent, but also in need of connection. Wisdom lies in recognizing and embracing all these aspects of ourselves without identifying exclusively with any one of them. In the context of emotional dependency, this means accepting both our longing for connection and our need for autonomy. It means acknowledging both our strength and our vulnerability. It means embracing both our light and our shadow. In this integration, we find true freedom. Jung also speaks of the elusive treasure, wisdom and wholeness that can only be found by passing through our own psychological hells. Emotional dependency, with all its pain and limitation, can be one of those hells. But the treasure on the other side, an authentic relationship with ourselves and others, is well worth the journey. How does emotional dependency manifest in your life? Maybe you're constantly seeking approval, unable to make decisions without consulting others. Perhaps you lose yourself in romantic relationships, forgetting your own interests and dreams, or stay in toxic situations out of fear of being alone. Recognizing these patterns is the first step toward transformation. The telltale sign of emotional dependency is the emptiness we feel when alone. If solitude feels unbearable, if you constantly need to be in contact with someone to feel okay, you may be dealing with a disconnection from your own center. Jung would invite us to explore this emptiness, not to escape it, because it's precisely in that apparent void that we can rediscover our own wholeness. Another common sign is what we could call a loss of boundaries. In codependent relationships, we often don't know where we end and the other begins. Do we take responsibility for others' emotions or expect them to take responsibility for ours? Jung would teach us that setting healthy boundaries is not an act of rejection, but of love, for ourselves and for the other. Emotional dependency can also show up as an excessive need for control. Paradoxically, the more we depend on someone, the more we try to control the relationship to reduce our anxiety. This control may appear as jealousy, possessiveness, or constant need for reassurance. Jung would show us that this illusion of control is the psyche's attempt to cope with the fear of abandonment, though it only deepens our disconnection. A hallmark of emotionally dependent relationships is the cycle of idealization, followed by devaluation. At first, we see the other as perfect, the answer to all our needs, but when their humanity and flaws inevitably appear, we may plunge into intense devaluation. This cycle reflects our inability to see the other as a whole person, with both light and shadow. Jung teaches that true emotional freedom lies in seeing the other fully, without the distortion of our projections. It also means seeing ourselves in our entirety, accepting both our strengths and our weaknesses. This mutual recognition is the foundation of authentic, fulfilling relationships. The journey toward emotional freedom is not linear. There will be progress and setbacks, moments of clarity and confusion. Jung would remind us that this apparent disorder is part of the natural process of transformation, that sometimes we must tear down old structures before building something new, that sometimes we must get lost to be found. A powerful practice to break emotional dependency is what Jung called active imagination. It's about consciously dialoguing with different parts of our psyche. We might, for instance, visualize the part of us that clings desperately to others and ask it what it needs, what it fears. This inner dialogue can reveal the deep needs we're trying to meet through our dependency. Jung would also speak of the importance of finding meaning in our suffering. Emotional dependency, with all its pain, can be a gateway to deeper self-knowledge, to greater understanding of our core wounds, and to a more authentic connection with ourselves and others. Seeing our suffering through this lens can transform how we relate to it. A key concept in Jungian psychology is synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that seem to mirror our inner world. If you're in the process of freeing yourself from emotional dependency, you may begin noticing synchronicities related to this journey. Perhaps you keep encountering messages about autonomy or meet people who embody aspects of your path. Jung would invite us to pay attention to these synchronicities as signs that we're on the right path. The integration of opposites is central to Jungian psychology in the context of emotional dependency. It means finding balance between our need for connection and our need for independence. It's not about choosing between being fully independent or completely dependent, but about integrating both needs into a new, healthier way of relating. Jung believed each of us carries a wounded healer within, that part of us which, through our own wounds, gains the ability to help others heal. Many who have overcome emotional dependency discover that their journey has gifted them with profound understanding and compassion for others facing similar struggles. Your healing can become a gift to the world. If you're in the process of breaking free from emotional dependency, remember you're not just leaving behind a dysfunctional pattern. You're stepping into a fuller, more authentic, and more fulfilling way of being and relating. You're reclaiming parts of yourself you once handed over to others. You're discovering your own ability to stand on your own, to nourish your own growth, to become the author of your life. This journey, as Jung would point out, isn't only personal, it's also collective. When you heal your patterns of dependency, you're contributing to the healing of a wider pattern that affects many. You're adding your light to the world, showing others that freedom from limiting cycles is possible. Your personal courage becomes a force for collective transformation. The most powerful moment comes when you realize you don't need anyone to complete you, but you choose to share your wholeness with them. When you understand, you don't need to be rescued, but welcome support. When you know you can survive alone, yet choose connection. This is the balance Jung described as true interdependence. Two whole beings, choosing to create something together. Now ask yourself, what small step can you take today to move toward greater emotional freedom? What boundary needs to be set? What part of you longs to be seen and honored? What old belief are you ready to release? Remember that every small step matters, that every act of self-love counts. This journey toward emotional freedom isn't just about letting go. It's also about reclaiming. Reclaiming your power, your voice, your right to choose. Reclaiming those parts of you once pushed into shadow. Reclaiming your right to a full life, not shaped by others' validation or presence, but by your connection to what Jung called the self, that divine spark which is the source of your true identity. Emotional dependency may have made you feel small, powerless, incomplete. But there is within you, as Jung reminds us, an unlimited potential, an innate capacity for healing and growth. Your true nature is not dependency, but wholeness, not fear, but love, not fragmentation, but integrity. The path to this integrity is rarely smooth. You will face resistance inside yourself and from those around you. Parts of you may cling to old patterns because they feel familiar, even if they're painful. People in your life might resist your growth because it challenges the existing dynamics. Jung would have us see this resistance not as a barrier, but as part of the process, as a sign we're touching something meaningful. This journey has no final destination. Individuation, as Jung described it, is a continuous unfolding, a process of becoming, integrating, and self-discovery. Each level of emotional freedom you reach opens the door to new insight, new challenges, new opportunities for growth. And within that constant unfolding lies the beauty and purpose of life. If you're in the middle of this journey now, know this: you are not alone. Every step you take toward emotional freedom is an act of courage. Every time you honor your own needs, set a healthy boundary, or recognize your worth, you're not just healing your life, you're also contributing to collective healing. He believed deeply in the transformative power of awareness. Each time we bring light to an unconscious pattern, it loses its power over us. Your emotional dependency, once acknowledged and understood, can no longer control you the same way. You've already started your liberation simply by listening to this message, by being willing to look at these patterns with honesty and compassion. I invite you to share your reflections. What part of this message spoke to you? What patterns have you recognized in your own life? What steps have you taken toward your emotional freedom? Your voice, your experience, might be the light someone else needs on their path. And remember, this space is a community where we're all learning, growing, and supporting one another in this journey toward greater awareness and freedom. If this message resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit. Sometimes, the right message reaches someone at the exact moment they need it. Your act of sharing might be the spark for someone else's transformation. I also invite you to subscribe if you haven't already, and to turn on notifications so you don't miss future messages on deep psychology, personal growth, and the journey toward a more authentic life. Together, we are building a community of people committed to their own development and to raising collective awareness. Thank you for being here, for your openness, for your courage in exploring these deep topics. Emotional dependency does not define who you are. It's just a pattern, a habit, a strategy you developed at some point to survive. But you are so much more than your patterns. You are a being in constant evolution, with infinite capacity to transform your life and relationships. Jung would remind us that the journey to emotional freedom is not one we walk alone. We are supported by the collective wisdom of all those who have walked this path before us. We are all connected by something far deeper than what we see on the surface. Beneath the masks, beneath the roles we play, beneath the stories we've been told and the ones we've created about ourselves, there exists a shared humanity, a universal thread that links every one of us through our pain, through our healing, through our hopes and silent prayers. We are united by the ache of longing, the search for meaning, the quiet battles we fight in the solitude of our minds, and the invisible wounds we try to mend without anyone noticing. And within this vast interconnection, there is a profound comfort, a sacred refuge, and a strength that transcends the individual. You are not alone in your struggle. Your story is not isolated, and even in your moments of deepest sorrow, you are still part of something greater, something timeless. The human journey, one of falling, rising, forgetting, and remembering. Let me leave you with this final reflection. Emotional freedom is often misunderstood. It is not the cold absence of need. It is not the armor that makes us untouchable, nor the illusion that we must walk alone to be strong. Emotional freedom is not about silencing your heart or rejecting your desires in the name of self-reliance. True emotional freedom is something far more courageous. It is the ability to recognize your own needs and to speak them aloud. Not from fear, not from desperation, but from a place of self-respect and clarity. It's about honoring what you feel, not suppressing it. It is being open enough to be vulnerable, without giving your power away. It is standing in your truth, even when it's inconvenient, even when it shakes the ground beneath your feet. To be emotionally free is to love without losing yourself. To give, not from emptiness, but from wholeness. It is the art of holding space for others while also holding your own boundaries sacred. It is choosing relationships that reflect your worth, not your wounds. This kind of freedom, this quiet liberation, is not something far away, hidden in some distant future. It's not a goal reserved only for the enlightened or the healed. It is here, now, in this very moment. It lives in every decision you make to come back to yourself. Every time you choose to stop abandoning your own needs for the comfort of others. Every time you say no with love. Every time you say yes to what truly matters. It lives in your courage to reclaim the pieces of yourself you gave away, the dreams you set aside, the truths you silenced, the voice you buried. The path is already in front of you. You don't have to know every step. You just have to be willing to take the next one. Because the journey to emotional freedom isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the layers of fear and conditioning. The next step is yours. And remember what Carl Jung once said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. And maybe this is the moment, the one where you stop waiting for permission. The one where you realize that the clarity you've been searching for has been within you all along. That your light isn't something you have to earn. That your power doesn't come from control. It comes from awareness, from presence, from the brave act of returning to yourself, again and again. It's time. Time to awaken your own light. Time to reclaim your voice, your power, your dignity. Time to walk away from the cycles that keep you small. Time to rise from the ashes of old stories and step into the truth of who you are. You don't have to keep surviving. You are allowed to live. Fully, authentically, powerfully. Break free from the chains of emotional dependency. Reconnect with your inner self. And remember, the world doesn't need a perfect version of you. It just needs you. Real, whole, awake. That's where your freedom lives. And it starts now.